I am Kelly P. from Green and Prosperous, and in this video, I'm going to show you what I do when I transplant seedlings from one environment to my raised bed. In this case, I'm transplanting from soil to a raised bed. Come on, let's go. Okay, so today, before the rain comes, I'm going to transplant some seedlings I've had growing. Some of them were in my greenhouse and some were inside the house. So these were originally being grown hydroponically, and I've transplanted them to soil where they've been growing inside the greenhouse for the past few weeks. So I am going to today transplant some komatsuna plants. These are an Asian green, really delicious. I just want to show you what they look like. And I've just noticed there are some aphids on this plant, so I'm going to just spray the plant for some aphids, for these aphids before I transplant it. The thing with transplanting is you really want to make sure that your plants are not stressed out when you're transplanting them, right? So every plant goes through transplant shock, and you want to make the conditions that they're growing in as favorable as possible, so that when you transplant them, they aren't already in a weakened state. And if they're weak and you transplant them, there's a good chance that they won't survive or they'll just struggle. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some compost to the soil. I've actually been adding compost to this bed for a few months, so it does have a good amount of compost in it already. It's got a good little ecosystem growing in here. So a healthy ecosystem in soil generally has a number of things, beneficial bacteria, good organisms like that, and it will, once I get things planted in here, attract some beneficial insects to help me keep the bad insects or the harmful insect populations down. I'm just adding a little bit more. It's compost. I had also earlier added some used coffee grounds. Used coffee grounds are really great in the garden because, among other things, they help with the structure of the soil. They help create a good structure for the soil, and they are nearly pH neutral, so they're not going to make your soil more acidic, right? If you were adding unused coffee grounds to the soil, that would definitely make your soil more acidic. But if you add used coffee grounds, it actually helps your soil. And best of all, it attracts earthworms, which produce lots of really nutritious worm castings or worm poop, which the plants love. Okay, so here goes komatsuna. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you probably know at this point I would add mycorrhiza. So mycorrhiza are a type of beneficial fungi that form a relationship with the roots of your plant. And among other things, they help the roots of your plants take up water and nutrients a lot more efficiently. So whenever I transplant, I usually add this to the soil. But in this case, I'm transplanting komatsuna. which is a plant in the brassica family. And brassicas do not form a mycorrhizal association. What that means is adding mycorrhiza to the soil when you're planting or transplanting brassicas, including komatsuna, is really not going to do anything for those plants. So it's better if you just take the time to build up your soil. Having healthy soil is absolutely essential for healthy plants. And a lot of times people will skip that step, right? They'll just stick plants in the dirt, or maybe just buy a bag of soil from the store. You can certainly use store-bought soil and plant right in there, but if you can amend the soil, if you can improve the structure, if you can improve drainage with things like perlite, or drainage and moisture retention with perlite and vermiculite. Vermiculite helps with moisture retention, and of course adding compost, as well as other things like the used coffee grounds, as I mentioned, really help improve the quality of your soil. So even if you are using store-bought soil, you can improve it. Okay, so I've got one komatsuna planted. This one here is not what I thought it was. I thought it was komatsuna. It's actually another Asian green, which I love to plant, called Chiji Masai, which is a cross between komatsuna and tatsoi. If you've ever heard of tatsoi greens, they're very popular in Asian cooking. But in this case, I have Chiji Masai in my greenhouse, and I'm just going to put this one in there. This komatsuna will be joining the other one. Now, the thing is, when you plant it in soil like this, right, and they've been growing in here, it can be a little challenging to get them out. Try to use gravity as much as possible to help you pull the plant out, and that way you can avoid stressing it more than necessary. Okay, so just fill the hole. Fill it with soil here. To break one of the leaves, so I'm just going to take it off. And this one, just a little bit of help getting some of in there, and it's good to go. It'll straighten up in the next few days or so. And so now what I'm going to do is water these plants in. So you want to do that as soon as possible after transplanting, so that, again, the plants aren't being stressed out. You don't need to really don't need to add fertilizer when you first transplant a plant. Some people do, I do sometimes, but if you do use fertilizer, be sure to use a diluted batch of fertilizer. In other words, don't add as much as the manufacturer tells you to add, right? Because the plant does need some time to establish itself. But adding a little bit of fertilizer to the water is not going to hurt. I'm also going to water it with magnesium water, meaning I've added, in this case, Epsom salt to the water, and that will help the plant to get over transplant shock a lot quicker. So it's like giving it a little burst of energy to help it along. So the last thing I'm going to say is try as much as possible to water the soil instead of the plant. It's not always possible, but if you can keep the leaves a little on the dry side when you're watering, that will help the plant to avoid getting fungal diseases. There is one last thing I almost forgot. It's so important. The last step is to put a label so that you can remember what you planted where. If you think you're going to remember, that's probably not going to happen unless, of course, it's something really obvious that you planted so many times that you can tell what it is from a seedling, like basil, right? It's pretty recognizable from the start, but most plants are not. So definitely label your plants after you transplant them. Bye for now.